presentation now.
We do. We are up and running.
Alrighty. Okay, awesome.
All right, thank you guys for your support. We appreciate it. All right, kind of want to move that Zoom window out of the way. All right, we're gonna keep rolling because we're short on time now. So who am I? Ryan Vandenberg, cybersecurity consultant, have some certifications. We're gonna talk about the CompTIA related ones a little bit. I've worked for a couple of local area companies, Aspire Ventures, local venture capital backed tech incubator. So a startup that starts startups. So I've worked on a number of different projects there. I was very fortunate to help co-found one of the ventures, Wiley. A lot of the ventures at Aspire Ventures are healthcare focused. So when you have a healthcare focused business, you're dealing with patient health information, which is some of the most valuable information that you could have. And it really needs to be kept secure for a lot of reasons, HIPAA compliance, high trust, etc. All right, volunteering is something that I do. As you progress in your careers and you become cybersecurity professionals, you're going to find out that not every business, not every company has the funds and the ability to keep their assets secure. So a nonprofit like the Gatehouse really relies on outside people like myself to help keep their assets secure. So if you're able to give back as you progress in your career, I highly recommend it. It's a need that's out there. Advancing slides again. There we go. All right, we're talking about why we need to think like bad guys. We're going to talk about who the bad guys are. And we're going to talk about, most importantly, why we need to use our powers and our knowledge for good and not evil. We're going to talk about what the bad guys are up to. And we're going to talk about what tools are being used. Let's start off with the terminology. So what is the threat? Okay, great. Zoom is helping us out here. A threat is a potential bad thing that can happen. And oftentimes these bad things are being done by criminals and other attackers. A vulnerability is a weakness, right? This weakness can be due to a flaw in hardware, in software, or a vulnerability could be because we didn't add a security control where we needed one to keep assets or information secure. Not having antivirus or endpoint detection on a computer, that's a vulnerability. Exploitation is the act of carrying through with a threat on a vulnerability. We're going to talk about how exploitations can lead to theft of information and services. All right, to help us understand this concept better, we're going to use an analogy of a burglar. You might recognize these famous burglars over here. All right, so if we never check the locks on our home's doors and windows, how can we be sure that we're secure, that our families, that all our cool stuff is safe? So this is why we have to think like bad guys. We have to think like burglars. And in this analogy, your home is like a corporate network or a business's website. Okay, so who is it that's jiggling our doorknob and trying to get in? We have some more terminology here. So in old Western movies, Hollywood would do this thing where to help give you a non-visual cue on who the good guy was and who the bad guy was, they would give them a colored hat. So the good guys, they wore the white cowboy hats. Bad guys, black cowboy hats. There used to be a magazine called Mad Magazine, and there was a whole comic strip about spy versus spy. The bad spy, the black gear. The good spy, the white gear. So that's kind of the origin of some of these terms. So a white hat is an ethical hacker. And we're going to talk about that ethics piece a little bit later. So white hat hackers use their capabilities and their tools to uncover security issues, to help keep organizations secure. And who are they securing it from? The black hat hackers. Black hat hacking it's a broad term. So we're going to talk about some of the different subsets of those individuals, but basically a black hat is somebody who's going to try to break into a network with malicious intent. All right, has anybody ever heard the term script kiddie? Raise your hand. Okay, so a script kiddie is someone who takes pre-made scripts, often downloaded off a forum or a website, and tries to use it to find and then eventually exploit a vulnerability. This is somebody who doesn't really understand what they're doing, so they're unsophisticated. They downloaded the thing and they're trying to make it work. So security researchers, when they put these scripts out there for other researchers to use, they will deliberately make small changes so that once you try to download it and run it immediately, it's not going to work. You're going to have to understand a little bit about Python scripting, Bash scripting, to change an IP address, remove a comment, and that's just to help protect against script kiddies downloading something and being able to immediately cause harm to a computer system. Okay, so on the continuum of ability, script kiddies are at the beginning, not very sophisticated. Hacktivists, they're kind of in the middle. A hacktivist is someone who has some sort of mission or a goal. It's pretty frequently socially oriented. So it might be to crash a website with a distributed denial of service attack. It might be to exfiltrate some valuable data from your network, credit card data, patient health information, government secrets. So examples of hacktivism, the hacker collective Anonymous. When certain social things happen throughout the world, issues of police brutality, other controversial things, Anonymous will knock websites offline, expose sensitive information, that type of thing. WikiLeaks is an example of hacktivism. Okay, and then down on the end where the really, really bad guys are, we're talking about nation state actors. So these are hacker groups that are government funded. So they have very deep pockets, lots of resources available, very sophisticated, highly capable. In the last 5 years, North Korea and their state-sponsored hackers have stolen over $1.2 billion in cryptocurrency. So if you're a nation-state actor, if a nation-state actor is coming after your business, you're in trouble. You need outside help. So, anybody recognize that quote, with great power comes great responsibility? Okay, so we're learning about some pretty serious stuff, and we need to make sure that we understand the ethics of this. So you got to remember, we're the good guys, okay? You cannot use any of these tools that you're going to learn about today and later on in your careers on any targets without their permission. So you can't use this against the person you're mad at. You can't use this on a company that you had bad service from. If you do, I have a helpful meme here to tell you what's going to happen. Right to jail right away. So how can you practice these tools? Well, there's pre-configured lab environments available. You can build a home lab of your own to work through, but do not ever use these tools on targets where you do not have permission. I want to be very clear about that. In the 1970s and the early 80s, the computer revolution was happening, and a lot of really brilliant people at MIT started to talk about things like hacker ethics. So Stephen Levy, one of those individuals, tried to spell out some of the general tenets of hacker ethics, and it included a couple things like sharing and openness. So as ethical hackers, we're sharing our expertise with the companies we work for, with the other businesses in our community, and we're being open about information. We're being very clear that if you don't take preventative actions to keep your system secure, bad things can happen to you, and bad guys can use your assets to attack other companies as well. Okay, and then just to really drive this point home, if you do find yourself attacking a system that you don't have permission to be accessing, it's almost always going to be a federal crime. The nature of the internet is it's widely distributed, so you're going to be prosecuted under federal crime statutes, particularly the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. So again, what happens if you do these things without permission? Right to jail right away. All right. So we're gonna dive into some of the process a little bit here. So we have this visual aid here of an inverted triangle where we start out very broad, get a little bit more specific, and then by the end get super specific. So a tactic, that's a high level description of what we're trying to do. We are trying to find a door in your home that's going to give us access. What's a technique? Well, we want to try to find a door that has a doorknob with a vulnerability in it. Okay, and then a procedure. We want to find a door with a doorknob that we can put a paper clip in and it's going to trip open the latch. So taking this analogy and applying it to the cybersecurity world, trying to find that door that we can unlatch, that's going to be like finding an unpacked Windows server. Okay, and then what's the technique? We're going to use a tool called a port scanner to find a specific service running like remote logon. And then what's the procedure? We're going to use the zero logon exploit. That was an exploit that was released last year and caused a lot of problems for a lot of people to gain access to that server. Does that make sense? Okay, so back to the bad guys. So reconnaissance, is that a term some of us have heard before? Okay, so imagine those two burglars from Home Alone sitting across the street from your house watching you. They got the binoculars out and they're watching really carefully. Are they going to see you use the same key to unlock your car, the front door, your shed, your mailbox? Well, that would be kind of like using the same password for all your different services. And I hope we all know that that's a very bad idea. Many people do still reuse passwords despite the risks. So there's a security researcher by the name of Troy Hunt, and he's created a website. All of you can go access this website. Have I been pwned? I think we all get that term, right? So what this website is it's a collective database of public data breaches. So a website's been hacked, their logon information's been stolen, and it's been published on the dark web or other places. So once that happens, those data breaches are shared with Troy Hunt, and he has them on this website. You and your family, you can go to this website and put in your email address, and it's going to tell you if that email address has shown up in any of these public data breaches. So what you might see is your email address shows up for SoundCloud. Oh no, somebody has accessed your SoundCloud information. So sometimes it's just maybe your name, your zip code, some information about the songs you listen to. That's not that damaging. In other cases, clear text passwords have been found. So if you know that you had a SoundCloud account and you remember what that password is and you've used that elsewhere, you need to change that password. And just to be really clear, this site doesn't show you passwords, it just tells you the information that was compromised. Really helpful tool. So bad guys are going to use this as well. On most business websites, the executives and other important people, they have their name and their face out there. So bad guys are going to take that, try to guess their email, run it through the system, and see if they can possibly find those passwords on the dark web and elsewhere. All right, next thing we're going to talk about is vulnerability scanning. So this is kind of like walking around your home and looking at the doors and windows and trying to see if anything looks a little bit vulnerable. So does it look like the door is going to latch itself if I push on it? Does it look like the type of doorknob that a paperclip is going to let me open it up? Are there cracked panes of glass that we think we might be able to push on and let us access the lock? Vulnerability scanning, one of the tools that's widely available is a tool called Showdown. Showdown is basically Google for internet connected devices. So let me give you an example. If we wanted to find devices and IP addresses that are Citrix devices, that's a popular networking company in Germany that are vulnerable to a specific issue. So we see CVE, that's common vulnerability and exposure. And then we see a year, that was the year it was released. And this is the identifier 19871 that's been assigned to this particular Citrix vulnerability. So if you've ever used Google, you know you can use labels with a colon to help tailor your search. Same thing on Showdown. Find vulnerability, this identifier, and the country ID. So this is also a tool that you can access. You can do a little bit of stuff for free, and then it's a paid service after that. Nmap. Okay, so if you guys are pursuing some of those CompTIA certifications that I talked about, specifically A+, N+, Security Plus, you're going to become very familiar with this tool. It's command line based, and it was created in 1997 by Gordon Loyne. It's most commonly known as a port scanner, but it does a lot more than that. A port in computer systems is kind of like a window in your home, right? It's a way that something can pass in and out. Command lines are difficult for some people just starting out in cybersecurity, so there is a GUI version, a graphical version available. You can learn more at the URL down there. Nessus. Okay, we're gonna now move into a category of tools that started out open source and then became commercial. So it's a vulnerability scanning tool with reporting capabilities. So bad guys, they're mostly concerned about the scanning. Us good guys, we need reporting capabilities so we can inform our stakeholders about the risks available, the risks that exist. Created in 1998, unfortunately in 2005, it did change its licensing. There are still open source forks of that available, meaning free versions, and you can learn about those by Googling those terms. Okay, so we talked about observing from across the street. We talked about walking around the home and looking at the doors and the windows very closely. Now we're talking about actually trying to get into the house, trying to get your valuable stuff. So as explained here, penetration testing goes beyond just seeing what's available and actually doing the thing, trying to defeat the security controls, break into the targeted system. The concept of penetration testing started in the 90s, and it was called adversary simulation. So thinking like the bad guys, right? And today, penetration testing is more all-encompassing. We want to find all the potential flaws. Back then, it was sort of limited to the most likely attack methods. And this quickly gained popularity because compliance teams and regulators, they love this type of investigation. And we're going to talk about why. So we do penetration testing as cybersecurity professionals to help protect the organization and their assets. We covered that one, right? Customer data is extremely valuable. Customer data, once stolen, can be sold on the dark web for tens of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. We do penetration testing to satisfy stakeholder requirements. What does that mean? So if we're a business and we want to start a new product, we need to demonstrate that we have designed that product in a way that it's secure and it's not going to be manipulated or compromised as soon as it's launched. We need to also preserve the organization's image and reputation. Target was breached a couple of years ago, Capital One. Their stocks tanked immediately when that happened. It's a very bad look for your organization to be compromised. In the venture capital world, when I worked at Aspire Ventures, if a fledgling venture was compromised, they simply weren't going to get any more funding. That was just the end of the line for them. Data breaches are very, very negatively impactful. All right. This is slide there. Okay. Burp Suite. So if you're a web application developer, a mobile application developer, or doing pen testing on either of those things, this is the tool you're absolutely going to use. It's kind of like the industry standard. It's a really broad tool. It can do vulnerability scanning, sort of the classifications of stuff we've already talked about, but it can also do penetration testing. It's a little bit outside the scope of this conversation, but this tool can do things like SQL injection attacks, cross-site scripting attacks. It's a very, very capable tool. It is a commercial tool, about $550 a year. There is a free version available too. If you're a student and you don't have the funds to buy something like that, there are alternatives. There is a community group called the Open Web Application Security Project, OWASP, they do all sorts of things like develop tools like this one, training, best practices, standards, that type of thing. as you continue on your cybersecurity career, you'll definitely learn about OWASP. But this particular tool, OWASP Zap, does the same thing as Burp Suite. It'll do vulnerability scanning and penetration testing. All right, so now we're really in the weeds on penetration testing, the Metasploit framework. So this started out as an open source project, free to everybody, and it comes pre-installed in Kali Linux, if you've ever heard of that. This tool has a database of exploits and payloads and other tools. So one example is you can load up this tool and say, I know there's a server running a certain version of software. Are there any exploits in this database I can launch against it? And the search system will allow you to do that. This was another tool that has been acquired, and there's a commercial version available, but you still can use it in an open source way. So if you've ever seen the television series Mr. Robot, Metasploit was one of the tools that Elliot used. All right, that was pretty rapid fire. I know there's a lot of information crammed in a small amount of time, but as you leave here today, as you continue on your paths to learning more about information security and cybersecurity, there's a couple sites here that I want to talk about. Try Hack Me. This is my favorite site for learning about cybersecurity. It's a tutorial-based, gamified way to learn all sorts of information about cybersecurity. The defender side, the attacker side, security operations. It's my favorite site for learning this type of information. Pen Tester Lab, very similar, also really well put together. If you're the type of person that doesn't like to go out to websites and give your information and that sort of thing, there are 2 projects that you can download to your local computer and run them offline. They're called the OWASP Juice Shop and the Darn Vulnerable Web Application. So you download these frameworks, these applications onto your computer, and you get to try to break into these systems. So you don't have to worry about going right to jail right away. You can play with these in your own environment safely. The last one I want to mention here, Black Hills Information Security. They're a commercial group in South Dakota, and they do a lot of cybersecurity education and information sharing. They have at least one webinar each week on how you can get into cybersecurity, on how you can learn some of these concepts that we're talking about today. I can't recommend them highly enough. All right, I think we're about out of time here. Do we have time, maybe 1 or 2 quick questions, anybody? All right, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.